I've always believed the scariest stories are the ones that could actually happen. The kind you hear once, then can't stop imagining happening to you. These aren't ghost tales or urban myths. They're real moments where ordinary people met something that wanted them gone. It started with a forgotten high school trip. A group of seniors from a small Ohio town had gone hiking in the woods behind an abandoned campground. The teachers let them roam too far. One of them, a girl named Maya, found a path that wasn't on the map. A narrow trail that cut into thick pine trees. Her friends followed, phones out, laughing about making a Blair Witch vlog. They were gone 15 minutes before anyone noticed they hadn't come back. When the chaperones finally found them, Maya was standing in the middle of a dry creek bed, shivering, whispering that she'd heard the bell. No one knew what that meant until the next morning. One of the boys from her group never showed up at breakfast. They searched the woods again, and about a mile from the trail they found his phone, screen cracked, camera still recording. The last video showed the group running, and something metal clanging like a church bell in the distance. But there wasn't a church for 10 miles. Police combed the forest for weeks. They never found him. Maya stopped speaking entirely after that. When she finally did, she only said one thing over and over. He followed the sound. Music shifts low. It's uneasy. The second story happened 3 years later and 2 states away, but the pattern felt the same. A janitor at an abandoned middle school in New Jersey kept reporting noises at night. Doors closing, footsteps in the halls, the faint echo of lockers slamming. The district didn't believe him. They assumed it was raccoons. So he set up an old phone to record proof. The footage showed him sweeping near a stairwell, humming quietly. Then, without warning, every fluorescent light in the hallway flickered off at once. The video caught the sound of scraping, metal dragging across tile, and a voice muttering something low, too distorted to understand. When the lights came back, the janitor was staring at the far end of the hall where a shadow stood, taller than any person, arms thin like rebar. He dropped the phone and ran. He never came back to work. His wife found the phone in his locker 2 days later and brought it to the police. They opened the video file but said the last 10 seconds were completely black. IT technicians claimed the data was corrupted, overwritten by something not humanly possible. The school has since been sealed off. People driving past at night say you can still see one light flicker on inside. Even though there's no power to the building, music builds then fades to a soft pulse. The third story comes from a man named Eric, who once managed a gas station outside Phoenix. His station sat on a lonely stretch of highway, the kind where you can see headlights for miles. One night around 2 a.m., a car pulled up that he didn't recognize. A rust-colored sedan, windows tinted so dark they looked painted. The driver never got out. Eric watched for nearly 5 minutes before stepping outside to ask if they needed help. When he approached, the engine died. He could hear someone breathing inside, slow, uneven, almost like a growl. He knocked once, no answer. He leaned toward the glass, trying to see a face, and the back door slowly opened with a creak that echoed across the empty lot. There was nobody inside, just the smell of damp soil and something sharp like rusted metal. He backed away fast and went inside to call police. Before they arrived, he glanced at the security monitor. The camera facing the pump showed the same car still parked. Only now, standing beside it, was a man wearing a janitor's uniform, holding a flashlight that wasn't turned on. The feed flickered, and when it came back, both the car and the figure were gone. Police searched the area for hours but found no tire marks, no footprints, not even dust disturbed on the pavement. The next morning, Eric quit. He swears the flashlight that appeared on the video was the same model his old high school janitor used to carry. The same school that burned down 20 years earlier, after a gas leak explosion killed one man trapped inside the boiler room. Music swells slightly. The fourth story is the hardest to tell because it's mine. It happened during my first semester at college. I lived in an old dorm built in the 1950s. Peeling paint, flickering hallway lights, that constant smell of bleach. My roommate dropped out 2 weeks into the semester, so I had the room to myself. The first few nights were fine. Then I started waking up at 3 a.m. sharp to the sound of footsteps pacing above me. The strange part? I lived on the top floor. Maintenance insisted there was no access to the roof, but every night same time I'd hear slow, deliberate steps, 1, 2, pause, and 3, 4, like someone dragging their heel. I tried to ignore it until one night I finally yelled, "Who's up there?" The footsteps stopped. Then, clear as day, came 3 knocks on the ceiling. The next morning I told the RA. He looked exhausted, said every year they got the same report from at least one student in that room. I asked what happened before. He didn't answer right away, then told me the dorm used to be a hospital annex back in the 60s. The room I was in was once the recovery ward, and a janitor, as an older man, had fallen through the ceiling while fixing a vent. They found him dead right outside the room, broom still in his hand. That night I couldn't sleep. Around 2:58 a.m., I turned on my phone's voice recorder and waited. When the steps started again, I pressed record. They lasted 3 minutes exactly, then silence. The next day I listened back expecting to hear just footsteps. Instead, right before the end, a voice whispered, "I told you not to look." I moved out the next morning. I still have that recording saved somewhere, but I'll never listen to it again. Because sometimes when I'm lying in bed trying to fall asleep, I swear I still hear that same rhythm. 1, 2, pause, 3, 4, somewhere above me. Music deepens, heartbeat slowly joins under 4 stories. 4 lives that brushed against something they shouldn't have. A missing student following a bell that no one else could hear. A janitor swallowed by his own school's shadows. A man at a gas station facing a car that didn't belong on any road. And a student haunted by footsteps from a dead worker who refuses to leave. They don't share a place or time, but if you listen closely, there's a pattern. The sound. The bell, the metal scrape, the engine dying, the footsteps. Every story has its echo, and maybe that's the point, that whatever this is moves through sound, finding anyone willing to listen. So if you're hearing something right now, the creak, a hiss, a faint step above your ceiling, turn the volume down, because sometimes that's how it finds you. Music fades to silence. When I finished collecting those 4 stories, I thought that was the end. But something felt off, like I'd left a door half open. A few days after recording the video, I started getting messages on my channel. Not the usual great story kind. These were short, cold, and specific. The first one read, "He still follows the sound." No username, no profile picture, just that sentence. I ignored it at first, assuming it was a troll. But an hour later, another comment appeared under the same video. "You shouldn't have mentioned the bell." That one disappeared before I could take a screenshot. By the next morning, my inbox had 3 unread emails, all from different senders, but the subject lines were identical. "We heard it too." When I opened the first, it was blank except for a 15-second audio file named Loop 1 Wavdai. I clicked play. At first, nothing, as just static. Then faintly the sound of footsteps. 4 steps, pause, 4 more. The same rhythm from my old dorm. The second email had the same attachment, but halfway through the static shifted. I could hear a voice muttering something low, almost buried in the noise. I boosted the volume, straining to catch it. It said, "You told them my stories." I shut the laptop immediately. That night, I dreamed of the old gas station. The rust-colored car parked under a dead streetlight. Only this time, someone was sitting in the driver's seat staring at me through the glass. The reflection showed no face, just a black void where a mouth should be, and inside that void, the faint sound of a bell ringing. I woke up at exactly 3:00 a.m., the same time the footsteps used to start in my dorm. Except now I was living in a different city, in a new apartment, top floor again. And when I looked up at the ceiling, I swear I saw dust falling from a small, perfect circle. Like someone was walking up there. I turned on every light in the house and stayed awake until dawn. The next morning, my neighbor from downstairs came up to complain. He asked if I'd been dragging something heavy across the floor around 3. I told him no, that it wasn't me. He looked confused, said he'd heard the sound coming from above his apartment. But I'm on the top floor. There's nothing above me. That same evening I got a final email, no text. Just a video attachment titled janitor.move. The thumbnail showed a dark hallway, long, dimly lit, tiles glistening like they were wet. I hesitated, then pressed play. The footage was grainy, but the timestamp at the bottom caught my eye. It was dated the same night I uploaded the first video. 2:59 a.m. The camera panned slowly through what looked like an abandoned school. My heart froze when I saw the lockers, the same faded green as the ones in the New Jersey story. The light flickered once, and for a split second, A shadow stretched across the floor, long thin arms holding something that shimmered like a metal rod. Then the screen glitched. For 2 frames I saw a close-up of a man's face. Pale, eyes completely white, mouth wide open, and behind him, a door. On that door, written in dust, were 4 words, "He follows the sound." I shut my laptop and unplugged it from the wall. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't upload anything new for weeks. But silence has a way of pulling you back. 2 weeks later, I noticed my phone recording app had a new file. I hadn't used it since the night in my dorm. The file name was Rexiozojo5 Wave. The timestamp said 2:58 a.m. The exact time I woke up from the dream. My hands shook as I pressed play. At first it was just breathing. Mine, probably. Then came the sound of metal scraping on tile, like a broom being dragged. And then a voice, male, distant, whispering, "You said 4, for what?" 4 stories, 4 victims? Before I could think, the sound changed. A deep ringing, not from a bell this time, but from somewhere inside the recording itself, like feedback feeding on itself. I dropped the phone. The sound kept going even after I shut it off. The next morning, my front door was open. Not unlocked, open. On the floor just outside was a small rust-colored stain and a folded piece of notebook paper. It said in shaky handwriting, "We told you not to listen." I moved out the same day. I didn't take anything except my hard drive and my clothes. I stayed with a friend for a while, another creator who did horror content. He didn't believe me, said I'd been too deep in my own stories. So I told him everything. The bell, the school, the gas station, the footsteps. He laughed, said he'd use it for his next video. That night he texted me at 2:57 a.m. The message said, "It's walking above me." I called him. No answer. I drove to his apartment 20 minutes away. His lights were still on, the door unlocked. The room was empty. On his desk sat his laptop, screen frozen on an open recording file. The waveform still pulsed. It was recording silence. Then faintly from the speakers I heard it again. 4 steps, pause, 4 more. Then a single knock. I left the apartment and didn't look back. A week later I got an email from YouTube saying his account had been terminated. The reason? Violation of policy, duplicate content. The strange part? He'd never uploaded the video. Now months later I don't tell stories anymore. I deleted everything, or at least I thought I did, because a few nights ago I woke up to find my computer on. The camera light was blinking. On the screen my editing software was open, and in the timeline sat a file called 4 Disturbing True Scary Stories Part 2. The footage was me, sitting in this exact chair, telling this exact story, only while my mouth wasn't moving. I paused the playback. The video kept going. My on-screen self looked directly into the camera and whispered, "He's behind you." The room went dead quiet. I didn't want to turn around, but I had to. The wall behind me was dark, except for a faint reflection in the window. Something tall stood there, head tilted, arms hanging too long like its bones didn't fit right. And then softly the sound came. Not from the speakers, not from outside, but from the walls themselves. Clang, like a distant bell. The lights flickered. My monitor went black. And for the brief moment before everything shut off, I saw 4 words appear across the screen, glowing faintly like static. You followed the sound. Now, I don't know what's real anymore. Maybe these stories were always connected. Maybe they weren't stories at all. Maybe they were warnings. But if you've listened this far, if you're still here, I want you to do one thing. After this ends, don't replay it. Don't look for more. Don't listen for the sounds, because that's how it begins, and once it starts, it never stops. Sound fades. Faint echo of footsteps, then silence.